R&R to Sydney, Australia, which is very, very beautiful. And then I came back to the States. I was in Fort Carson, I was at Fort Eustis, Fort Lee, San Antonio, Texas, which is the training ground for medical personnel. It's a beautiful place. Native laboratories, and finally finishing up here in air. I had 3 children that went through school here. My daughter holds state record for home runs, RBIs, and strikeouts. She pitched and played caught for the year Panthers, and this was in 2009 and 10 that she set the state record.
So I haven't had the opportunity to live abroad yet. I'm still trying to put in that request to go somewhere new. But I have driven from here to Colorado and back a few times. So throughout all the states I've driven through, I think Colorado definitely is my favorite. I spent 7 years there, like I said originally, and it's just such a nice area. So much to do outside and a lot of nice stuff.
I forgot to mention that although I like some of the other places better, I really thoroughly enjoyed myself in Okinawa. I took up scuba diving and spent about half my days off down underneath the water in beautiful tropical water you can see forever, and all kinds of wildlife down there. I thoroughly enjoyed the scuba diving in Okinawa.
Anybody have a question?
What other hobbies do you guys have?
Hobbies.
Hobbies?
I personally don't have any hands-on hobbies. I like music. I like symphonic music, so I like listening to classical music. And while I'm listening to classical music, I don't mind having a book in my hands. And I mean a book, not using an iPad, but something I can turn pages on. And then if things are really going good, I'll have a glass of scotch on the next day. So you could say that, I'm doing 3 things at once.
I'm sorry, I lost your alcohol content thing.
We were just talking about that.
That's what, I do, but again, there's nothing hands-on that I do. I used to do websites and stuff, but then that kind of got old because people stopped looking at what I was doing, so I do it.
I just retired last year from coaching softball here. I coached at the middle school for 3 years. I coached baseball for 3 years when my daughter was in middle school, and I helped coach the high school softball team. But coaching was an awful lot of fun. Umpiring afterwards was great. Great source of extra cash. But anything to do with sports I really enjoy. I've been an on-again, off-again member of the boosters. This year I haven't been as active as the weather's been aggravating my arthritis, but come winter time I'll be going to the basketball games. In the spring I'll be looking forward to going to baseball and softball. I'd rather go to a high school game than go to the pros, because young people play with heart, and the pros pay for cash.
Yeah, when I was younger, I didn't feel like I was that much of a hazard, so I played golf somewhat, but I was never that very good at it, so I decided maybe I should stop playing before I killed somebody with a ball. So. But I also started singing when I was before I got into high school, and so I still sing. And no matter where you go, there's always some place or some group that sings, and so I always had a lot of fun with that. Also, I was talking, not one of these guys, but there was somebody that was stationed down at Langley Air Force Base after I was there, and that's another one of the wonderful opportunities is that I love to fish. And at Langley Air Force Base down at Hampton Roads, you've got the variety there in that if you go out the gate one way, you got, what is that, Fort Monroe is the Army base down there, I think. So you go out and Fort Monroe very nicely had a fishing pier going out into the salt water, and you fish off the fishing pier down there. You never knew what you were going to catch. And then if you go out the back gate at Langley, just a couple miles off the base, there's a nice little lake just off one of the main drags for freshwater fishing. You catch all kinds of freshwater fish. And the same thing was up in North Dakota. North Dakota was brutally cold during the winter, but at the time I had an 18-foot camper, and we actually, a group of us actually pulled that camper out onto a lake, onto the ice. The ice was like 3 foot thick. We had a power auger, went through 3 foot of ice, and had the camper set up to block the wind, and we sat out there ice fishing and caught 60-some fish out there. It was great.
Well, I've got 4 kids, so I don't really have too much free time. When I do have a little bit of time to spare, I like working on cars. And I actually picked up golf last year, which is a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. Also not very good at it. So when I get the free time, I'm trying to practice some more of that.
I'll just add to something that these fellows were saying, that when you're in the service, you are not in alone. You have a family, generally. Now, I could not have been a career Army officer without the absolute complete support of my family. Because the worst thing you can do is go make the military 100% and nothing with your family. Pretty soon you have a divorce on your hands. And that is something that you don't want. So that is a very, very important part of the military life, is the family that follows you around. My wife used to get a job that she would have to quit because I got reassigned. So a lot of what she would have done in her career progression was interrupted because of my service. I mean, she would work for a home services agency and then work herself into a good position, and then all of a sudden, whoop, off we went somewhere else, and she'd start at ground zero and go all through it again. We had 3 children during the period of time that we were in the service, and then you have to also worry about your children. How would you guys like to go from Ayer, let's say you're in the 5th grade, and the next thing you know, you're in Germany for 3 years, you left all your friends behind, now you go over to Germany, and you try to make new friends again, and you do, then whoops, off you go to Kansas. So you break up all the friendships that you had in Germany, now you go to Kansas, and you start all over again. So this happened with my kids, 5th grade, 7th grade, 9th grade, 11th grade. They were all broken up, went to different schools, had to come up with new friendships. Then you have to worry about the teenage years with your teenagers, and that is really tough, ladies. More so than guys, excuse me, I do have one daughter. And it is very, very tough on the families, but you have to look at it as an adventure, because there is more to life, and I hate to put it this way, than Ayer, Massachusetts. I have known some people, some friends of mine from high school, that really never left anywhere more than 20, if they left more than 20 miles from the house that they grew up in, that was amazing. And there is more to the world than the 20 miles around your house. as we all both said, we've got all these different cultures, all the different places that you can go to, different people that you meet, different organizations. There's just a lot there. I found that when I got out of the service, my military experience gave me a lot of management and a lot of leadership skills that I was able to use in a whole bunch of different organizations that I joined, and I worked my way up in the organization. But I found out that in life, there's also a lot of people who will let you do things that they should be doing, because you might want, not say you're a hard charger, but when you're in the service, you're duty bound. You have a duty to perform, you have a mission to perform, and you go out there and you do it to the best of your ability. And along the way, you're always going to meet some slackers, and don't let them take advantage of you. Look them in the eye, tell them to grow up, do their job. Just like Bill Belichick says, do your job, get out there and do it. And that's what you got to think about.
Yeah, interesting, you brought it up, and you had asked, but I'm sure your kids did the same thing, but my daughter started school in Homestead, Florida, then continued school in Okinawa for a couple years, then left Okinawa, continued school for a short time in North Dakota, then wound up in Woonsocket in Hartford, and then to Germany. For 3 years in Germany, she had some stability in Germany and learned to speak German, which is remarkable, and because she still speaks German today. And then back here, graduated from school in here. So your, as he was saying, your cultural education and experience is invaluable. It's a pain. I think that the family probably should get medals instead of us for the service.
I agree. Totally agree. Come on, you guys got to have some personal questions.
So I'm interested in going into politics after high school. As someone in the military, like aside from like personal beliefs or whatever, what would you look for in like somewhat like a politician as someone in the military?
When you're in the service, you have to be apolitical.
Yeah.
You absolutely do not get involved in
You
politics.
can't get, do you guys still
No.
vote?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You don't get involved in discussions
Okay.
Well, what do you look for is you look for somebody that's going to serve the people and try to do things for the interest, the best interest of the people.
Okay.
Now, my idea of best interest might be different than his idea
Yeah.
of best interest, but what is a politician? You don't want somebody that's in there to be their own self and to get there for their own glory. You want somebody in politics that's going to serve the people. It's my...
Yeah, a belief, if you want to hear it, I think there should be term limits.
So, yeah, me too.
Absolute term limits, make it 8 years. Get in there, do your job, after 8 years, get out. That goes for senators, that goes for the
Congress or anything.
the guys in the House. They can get too ensconced in doing what lobbyists want them to do and not doing enough for the voters that put them in office in what their constituents are doing. And, you know, you hear it on TV now where some of these questions have come up to some of the politicians. They say that, well, they have very important jobs to do in Washington or wherever they are. No, your most important job is the community that voted you into office,
Exactly.
and that's what you should be doing your work for.
You have to be able to compromise. Because if you can't compromise, you can't get anything done. That's why our government is all...
against each other.
I'm just really interested
But-
because you guys have to follow what, like, the government says no matter what, because, like, they're your commander, and even if you don't believe in what they're telling you too.
Well, you go off and you perform the mission that you have to perform, but you don't do anything illegal.
Yes.
That's
The
right.
minute something comes up that is a little bit hazy, if you're doing your job correctly, you say, I'm not doing it. It's illegal. And you take the consequences for that. Sometimes you have to dig real deeply when you have a jerk for a commander. And you have to work around that person to get your job done.
You take an obligation to defend the Constitution of the
That's
United
right.
States.
And I think the best part about being in the service is meeting other people and dealing with other people. Being a career Army officer was something I always wanted to do as a little kid. I would be the kid marching around the streets with a rifle or playing cops and robbers or doing whatever. But I always wanted to be in the military, and I got my commission through the ROTC program at Northeastern University. I think it would be good if our country brought the draft back again. I think everybody should serve their nation in one way or another. I'm not saying that the draft should be for the military, but how about helping out in Appalachia?
Agreed.
How about going somewhere and helping in your local neighborhood?
Inner city.
That you have to give back to the community that is giving to you so that you can do what you want. And it wouldn't hurt you to go into the service or go into the Job Corps for a period of 2 years. 2 years is nothing. Go in, get some experience. When you come out of it, you're going to be a much better person.
One of the interesting things, I don't know if it's of interest to you, but you're all in a biology class. So what are you learning in biology? And how can biology have any application in the military? Well, here's a fine example right here. He was a lab tech, and a lab tech doing blood stuff. So what does the military have to offer? Virtually everything that you have in civilian life exists in the military. When you pick up a group of us and send us to Germany or to wherever, what do you have? You have a small city that exists within another country. That small city is self-sufficient. It has its own people doing highways, it has its own hospital, it has its own school systems. It has its people, its own politicians, and that typically you have people who are involved in presenting the views of the enlisted or the officers, and you have a council that gets together with the governor or the mayor or whatever the president, whatever you want to call the commander of that base. The commander of the base is running that entire base and has somebody that's in charge of all of the highway department, the building department. You've got all of the same things that you would have in civilian life virtually. You've got a chaplain, you've got a church, you've got whatever. So it's kind of a different viewpoint on things, but we're a little subset within the big picture of life. And so when you look at, you guys are in biology. Are you going to make biology your life? You're going to do something that utilizes what you're learning here. You could, or you could have biology as something that you've learned along the way, and you're going to use it as something. Who was it? One of the ladies that brought us in here said that she thought she might go into psychology. Oh, there she is. Might go into psychology. Well, that's another interesting field to go into. Some of us really need a psychiatrist. But
Do you know that there's a military cemetery on Devens?
yes,
Yeah.
Have any of you ever taken a walk through it? Do it. Seriously. You know,
not during Halloween.
nobody's going to talk back to you, for one thing, while you're in there.
They won't scare you.
And they won't scare you.
With
But
an arrow.
there are some interesting grave sites in that cemetery, and you have to look at the periods of time where the Devon Cemetery had,
Italian prisoners.
well, there were Italian prisoners of war, German, but there were also an awful lot of children. people in their 40s, in the 1940s and 50s were buried there. There were children, there were wives, there were daughters of, and then finally it got away from that, and then it became, there were veterans that were buried up there, and there was somebody from the Civil War that was moved, I can't remember the name, was moved from Boston and reburied up at the Devon Cemetery. And there's a placard as you go on there that explains a lot that's in there. That's a little bit of history that you have right here on air, that someday if you're out driving or you just want something to do, it's free of charge. Go in, park the car, just walk around. I do it on Memorial Day and I do it on Veterans Day. If I can, I always walk through to remember those that have been before me. And that's another big thing about being in the service. Veterans, no matter where you go, you can start up a conversation with a veteran. We all got something in common.
One of the interesting things, I'll do his job for him, is that the military offers training, travel, recreation, school, and security, because you're in a job, you've got a contract, you got a, what is it, 4-year, 3-year, what are you doing?
We actually have 2-year options right now, depending on the job that you
Two-year?
choose. Yep.
The Air Force is still doing 4, I think.
Yeah, it depends on the job, but it can go from 2 to 6 years.
Yeah, so you got security in that you have a contract. And travel, because all of us, all 4 of us have been stationed he had the pleasure of being in the Middle East, which I've managed not to be in. Did you get out of the Caribbean with your Navy ships?
Yes. Yeah, if I could just
I'm sorry.
interrupt you for a moment. I'm having a brain fart, folks. It'll pass. You asked about what I do for a hobby. My wife and I, as a hobby, we travel as much as we can while we can. Because my wife just had her second knee replaced. She had her left leg done 6 years ago. A month ago, she had her right knee replaced. And prior to this happening, we wanted to make sure we got a trip in because she had problems walking. We did a trip to Portugal. I've never been to Portugal. So we started in Lisbon, went up to Porto, and then went on a riverboat cruise in Portugal along the Douro River. And again, we try to travel at least one major place each year to places that were on a to-do list. So now the next things that we want to do is some things in the States. I'd like to do the Meriwether-Lewis area and going up into the Dakotas and doing some stuff
I
up
went to
there.
South Dakota over the summer. Beautiful.
Where was
Gorgeous. It was gorgeous.
Where?
I went to Rapid City and Sioux Falls.
Mhm.
I just forget what it's called.
Black Hills?
Oh my goodness.
We're having a brain fart.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, the other ones can have those too, not Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore.
Oh, there you go.
Mount Rushmore
Yeah.
and Crazy Horse.
Yeah.
Learned so much about history of
Yeah.
the Native Americans. It was
Yeah.
gorgeous.
We did National Parks tour out of Las Vegas for 2 weeks.
Yeah, in the Badlands.
It was amazing. I mean, we were gone for 2 weeks. Just on a bus, you could take the tours. And because if you do it yourself as a driver and a passenger, the driver never sees anything.
Yeah, you see it, but you don't see
Yeah,
it.
you don't
see the
you
road.
don't appreciate it. So bus tours are great.
I have one question. How many of you in here are related to somebody that was military dependent?
Holy cow. That's a big change, because it used to be that most of the folks in the high school, in Air High School, were related to somebody at Fort Devens.
I have some cousins.
My husband was in the military for 23 years, the Air Force.
When they closed the hospital here at Devens, there was over 250 250,000 military retirees or dependents
Yeah.
in the New England area.
250,000?
In New England.
In New England,
$250,000.
a quarter of a
Wow,
million.
didn't know that.
One other thing was that there was a hospital over where your middle school is.
Hospital?
And yes, during the, right after World War II, World War I, there was up to 17,000 patients due to the flu epidemic. And they were treated in that area where your middle school is, in Shirley.
We're supposed to be out here at 9.
Yes.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to ask if there was anything like that you unexpectedly learned or something that surprised you while you were in service that you didn't expect.
Something that surprised you, unexpectedly learned
Yeah.
when you were in the service?
Surprised me.
If it says don't touch, don't touch.
I see. Well, I don't know. As far as the military, one of my jobs was forecasting the low-level winds in North Dakota, and at the time I was surprised that I was even involved in that, but what happened was that in Grand Forks, North Dakota, at the time, there were missile silos scattered all around up near the Canadian border and all around the in the northern part of North Dakota. And they had to transport the nuclear warheads to these missile silos and load the missiles with these nuclear warheads. My job was to, which I didn't know they were all over the place up there, and my job was to do low-level wind forecast because the warheads were transported by truck and they had to have helicopter security. So the helicopters are flying at 100, 200, 300 feet, anything below 1,000 feet. And I had never been involved in trying to forecast low-level winds and low-level visibility, and I was surprised that we did have that responsibility.
We have to go.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you so much for